the Elizabeth Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane, an institution where nearly every member of Batman's rogues gallery has been incarcerated under various circumstances. However, this madhouse has demonstrated a revolving door attitude to criminal rehabilitation, proving ineffectual in exercising inner demons that drive villains like the Joker and Victor Zsasz. Arguably, Arkham has not only served to exacerbate their afflictions, but has also driven its medical staff to insanity as well. Welcome to this in-depth guide to Arkham Asylum. Hello, this is Schizofenik, and thanks for tuning in to another Batman-related video. In this upload, I will be exploring Arkham Asylum, looking at the history, the architecture, the treatments used, and the various staff employed. However, I will not be exploring the inmates and patients, as I have another in-depth video that focuses solely on that subject. Please click the link if you want to watch that one. History. Serving as a Gotham City psychiatric hospital, Arkham Asylum has a long and brutal history. The popular graphic novel Living Hell revealed that the initial grounds were owned by the demonologist Jason Blood, and that the structure that eventually became Arkham was built well before the early 1900s and was known as the Gotham House of Madness and Ill Humours. This occultist performed exorcisms on his mentally ill patients who came from Gotham's poor and superstitious townships where psychiatric disorders were misunderstood as demonic possessions. Blood incarcerated his patients within suspended cages and even murdered some to dissipate their evil spirits. He later sealed the basement in order to keep the spirits contained. Eventually, the place was closed down and the land itself was sold to the Arkham family. However, after the death of Elizabeth Arkham's husband, she was plagued by dementia and cared for by their son, Amadeus. Unfortunately, Amadeus euthanized his own mother by slashing her throat and repressed the memory, telling others that she had committed suicide. By 1920, Amadeus inherited the house, and this aspiring Gotham psychiatrist decided to transform the building into a medical institution for those suffering from serious mental illness. He dedicated the asylum to his mother by naming it Elizabeth Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane. Construction of the facility began the following year in 1921, and Amadeus wanted the institution to serve as an alternative for repeat offenders. Amadeus took particular interest in Martin Mad Dog Hawkins, a serial killer who raped and sexually mutilated his victims. Arkham felt compassion for Hawkins, whom he perceived as a victim of his own incarceration, with no effective psychiatric treatment for his condition. Unfortunately, during the construction of the facility in April, Hawkins escaped before resorting to type and raping and murdering Amadeus' wife Constance and his daughter Harriet. Much like the death of his mother, Amadeus seemed detached from the deaths of his family, but was actually left permanently scarred by the incident and descended into madness himself. One example of his waning mental health was when he designed a floor plan that evoked occult runes, believing that the pattern would drive away the mysterious bat that haunted his dreams. Upon the asylum's opening in November of 1921, Hawkins was committed as its first inmate, and Amadeus treated him personally for several months. However, on the anniversary of his family's murder, he suffered a psychotic breakdown and executed Hawkins via electroshock therapy, which the GCPD ruled as an accident. Amadeus' mental state continued to deteriorate after this event, as he believed that mental illness was his birthright. By 1929, Amadeus became a patient within his own asylum after attempting to kill his stockbroker. He would eventually die singing the Star-Spangled Banner while scratching the words of a binding spell into the walls and floor of his cell with his fingernails. Since then, Arkham Asylum has been destroyed and rebuilt on multiple occasions. During the events of Last Arkham, Batman infiltrated the new institution as an inmate to learn how Victor Zsasz was escaping his cell and committing crimes in Gotham. He discovered that Zsasz bribed the contractor Zolly Hiram to build a secret passage during Arkham Asylum's reconstruction under its new head, Jeremiah Arkham. Additionally, the Nightfall storyline saw Bane blow up the facility, releasing all the inmates. After these events, the asylum was relocated to a large manor known as Mercy Mansion. A few years following the reopening, Arkham Asylum endured another crisis as an earthquake devastated Gotham. Dr. Arkham was left to contain his crazed charges, and in order to prevent their escape, sealed the building with steel shutters which he controlled from his office. During this time, the inmates would wreak havoc as food and other supplies dwindled. The situation was exacerbated when the federal government cut off support to Gotham City, which largely descended into gang violence. Cells were opened by the deserting staff, their inmates freed, and the institution closed for a year. The nephew of Amadeus and new administrator Dr. Jeremiah Arkham was persuaded to disable the security controls and permit the patients to leave the island in exchange for his life. This act would prevent the patients from starving to death within the asylum during the closure of Gotham City. Subsequently, it was revealed that Batman had established a hidden base within the sub-basement of the asylum known as the Northwest Batcave. However, this was later destroyed by Black Mask during the Battle for the Cowl story arc. It was during this time that Jeremiah discovered blueprints created by his uncle Amadeus for a new Arkham Asylum. Jeremiah decided to rebuild the facility according to his ancestors' vision, but to serve as a literal asylum to shelter the patients from the outside world. In Arkham Reborn, the asylum is rebuilt and financed by Dr. Arkham, who was later revealed to be the new Black Mask, a patient in his own asylum. He began to manipulate patients, however it was revealed that his special patients were figments of his own imagination. In this story arc, Bruce Wayne was declared bankrupt due to a plot by Hush, and Wayne Manor was repossessed by the city before being turned into the new Arkham Asylum, now known as Arkham Manor. However, Wayne decided to accept the situation, believing that he could keep a close eye on his foes due to his intimate knowledge of the manor's floor plans. In the 2009 Batman Arkham Asylum video game, Batman battled the Joker, who instigated an elaborate plot to seize control of the institution. Ultimately, he would trap Batman inside with many of his incarcerated foes and threaten Gotham City with hidden bombs. Aside from being destroyed, the asylum has continued to expand, with the facilities being customized to accommodate patients with unique security or health considerations, such as a refrigerator for Mr. Freeze. Advanced technological security measures have also been installed to help prevent metahuman criminals from escaping. Despite this, Commissioner Gordon has observed that the asylum does not effectively treat its patients or keep them detained, as many of them have either escaped or even taken control of the facility. Additionally, Arkham escapees and legitimate releases alike almost always continue to commit subsequent crimes, leading them back to the asylum where they can safely plot their next job, as opposed to going to jail within Blackgate Penitentiary. With this in mind, the administration is usually seen as ineffectual or corrupt. Therefore, in order to prevent the inmates from running the asylum, it remains under constant surveillance by Batman and the GCPD. Superpowered heroine Black Orchid, who visited the asylum, expressed that she was disgusted by what she perceived as a desperate place where the patients dwelt in terror, condemning the asylum as tottering and obscene. Similarly, Jean Loring, who was committed to Arkham by Ray Palmer at the conclusion of Identity Crisis, described Arkham as a hellish place of weeping and wailing. Location. Arkham's earliest depiction placed the facility somewhere upstate in a rural setting. However, since then, the asylum has been described to be placed deep in the suburbs of Gotham City. Subsequently, Arkham Asylum's second location was discovered inadvertently by the Joker, who stumbled upon the old Mercy Mansion situated on Mercy Island off Gotham's northern shoreline near the D'Angelo sewage treatment plant. Jeremiah Arkham believed that its remote location would make an excellent site for yet another reconstructed Arkham Asylum. In the Arkham Asylum video game, the institution was located on its own island, generating greater isolation where the inmates had to be segregated from the rest of Gotham society. This perhaps gave the facility hints of Alcatraz prison. Architecture and design. The gigantic gated Victorian mansion at the heart of the original Arkham Asylum was a single-family home occupied at the beginning of the 20th century by the Arkham family. The building itself was an eclectic mix of classic and Gothic design. However, its depiction in a serious house on serious earth suggested a more Georgian style. This sprawling Victorian campus with old stone walls possessed a number of dilapidated wings. It is believed that its design was based on the Danvers State Hospital and several other 19th century institutions. When Jeremiah Arkham became director, he had work crews dismantle the old Victorian-era stonework, but recreated an exact replica of the original gates made as a memorial to his uncle Amadeus. His rebuilt Arkham now contained a series of concentric maze-like corridors. This sprawling circular complex imitated a disorientating labyrinth which served as an intentional safety feature so that if the inmates escaped their cells, they would become lost when trying to flee from the building. Jeremiah Arkham also revealed that the asylum possessed a sectioned-off area at its centre called the Hole, which was a solitary confinement unit for patients who could not safely mingle with other inmates. However, this labyrinth may have been a figment of his own imagination. Additionally, Jeremiah introduced invasive glass observation walls for the cells, which made them less private for the inmates but allowed for 24-hour observation. For the safety of all, interviews were no longer conducted within rooms with violent inmates and were now performed through glass barriers or in rooms fitted with specialised isolation boxes. Each cell was fitted with CCTV cameras, which were also installed at periodic intervals along every corridor. Exterior windows were now fitted with heat and motion detectors, whilst magnetic foil insulation in the walls helped jam suspicious signal reception in the cell blocks. Furthermore, specialised cells with maximum restraints are in place for the most lethal of inmates, such as Victor Zaz. Others have shatterproof plexiglass to protect the staff from Poison Ivy's unique pheromones. Arkham Asylum reverted to its roots as an imposing manor when Jeremiah relocated operations to Mercy Island following the asylum's destruction by Bane. Built by Eric Mercy, a Gotham socialite who made his millions in the cement business, Old Mercy Mansion was a nightmarish Gothic structure. It was portrayed as having a dark exterior which included pointed arches, octagonal towers, flying buttresses, vaulted ceilings, and decorative spires. It was an extremely tall multi-storey manor sweeping upwards to emphasise its loftiness and grandeur. 2009's Arkham Asylum video game also presented Arkham within the Gothic imagery inherent to the Batman universe. Its architecture was dark, and the asylum structure felt as insane as those whom inhabited it. Although the mansion continued with a recognisable high Gothic style, the facility's design departed from comic interpretations of a large mansion. Instead, it presented an entire compound consisting of multiple buildings, which gave it a more expansive feel. Each structure was designed with a different architectural style to suggest that the buildings were individually constructed at different stages of history. For instance, the medical building was inspired by Victorian architecture with a metalwork structure intended to evoke feelings of horror. Furthermore, its intensive care centre possessed a Gothic industrial aesthetic. The catacombs beneath the facility were designed to feel oppressive via their industrial Victorian aesthetic and early 20th century style of brickwork. The maximum security area was retrofitted like a bunker, giving it a claustrophobic feel. The sites within the compound. Aside from Arkham Mansion, the facility has been depicted as having an intensive treatment centre, a medical facility, a morgue, the penitentiary, and the botanical gardens. The Intensive Treatment Centre. This ward is filled with some of Gotham's most dangerous criminals. The medical facility. This area was constructed to treat the most disturbed inhabitants of Arkham. The facility also possesses an experimental chamber, a sanatorium, and an X-ray room. The penitentiary. Located in Arkham West, the penitentiary contains Gotham's most dangerous criminals. These inmates are contained here due to their incredible abilities and powers that see them escape or threaten staff and other patients. The Botanical Gardens. Initially constructed as a tranquil place where the inmates could sit and reflect, the garden's purpose was to bring calm and peace to the patients of Arkham. Unfortunately, Poison Ivy used this area to build a Titan facility. Finally, the grounds of Arkham Asylum have numerous guard towers and the compound runs a vast sewer system. This maze of dank tunnels has served as the lair of Killer Croc. Types of treatment. Medication. Arkham Asylum has employed both psychiatrists and clinical psychologists who are responsible for prescribing medication like dopamine inhibitors for the more aggressive patients. However, since most incarcerated supervillains rarely display the common side effects of these drugs, it is believed that certain orderlies neglected to properly administer them. Furthermore, others may have pilfered real medication, substituting them for cheaper alternatives, which resulted in subtler side effects. Therapy sessions. Interviews are held periodically by Arkham's therapists for evaluation purposes, where an entire team of doctors may be present. Patients are encouraged to discuss their lives, thoughts, and desires. Dr. Ruth Adams was one such therapist who used word associations, asking the interviewee to respond to the first word that comes to mind when presented with an image or word. These sessions take place in specialized evaluation rooms, overseen by orderlies who are prepared to physically restrain the patient if necessary. If additional force is called for, each room is also fitted with a panic button that summons a team of armed security officers held on perpetual standby. Another member of the team carries a video camera to document the incident from the guard's perspective and proves that no excessive force was exerted off the record. Electroconvulsive therapy. Both Amadeus and Jeremiah Arkham have utilized electroconvulsive therapy. Shock treatment as a sanction may have been used to deter antisocial behavior amongst the inmates. According to Vicky Vale, the asylum also practices insulin shock therapy. Surgeries. Despite utilizing many harsh methods, Arkham neither encourages nor routinely authorizes prefrontal lobotomies. These procedures are further discouraged by bureaucratic restrictions and patients' rights groups. Arkham staff must obtain prior approval from the State Board of Medical Examiners before performing a lobotomy. Furthermore, Jeremiah Arkham stated that he does not consider lobotomy a progressive treatment, dismissing it as a poor substitute for medication and therapy. The staff. The first-named director of Arkham was Achilles Myuu, who successfully attained the position after driving his predecessor insane with a drug that induced psychotic episodes. Myuu then struck a deal with two patients who he could secretly release to commit robberies before providing them with an alibi in exchange for half of their loot. Ironically, Myuu was driven insane by his own narcotics and committed to the asylum as a patient. Subsequent director Huntoon was the last known administrative head prior to Jeremiah Arkham. However, his tenure was marred by scandals, including the Joker's escape during the events of The Killing Joke. Huntoon introduced new security measures, including an anti-riot system that flooded the cell block corridors with gas in the event of a mass disturbance. He also allowed his orderlies to carry tasers and pepper spray, where his guards were armed with batons and handguns. Despite these shortcomings, his regime developed an excellent working relationship with Batman. Upon Huntoon's retirement, Jeremiah took over as director and quickly ordered that the entire facility be demolished and rebuilt. During this process, he had the old files, including his uncle's diary, disposed of in a symbolic bonfire. Many of Arkham's medical staff have become unstable themselves whilst working at the asylum. These include Amadeus and Jeremiah Arkham, Alice Sinner, Harleen Quinzel, Jonathan Crane, and Hugo Strange. Overcrowding at the asylum has meant that violent and non-violent offenders have been located in the same blocks or even in the same cells. Often, the focus at the asylum is keeping the inmates detained rather than trying to rehabilitate them. Furthermore, the practice of employees trading contraband and even release forms to prisoners in exchange for sexual favours is rife. Journalist Vicky Vale once published an exposé claiming that patient neglect was common, with inmates not even being provided with clothing, as seen with Dr. Destiny. She noted the prevalence of outdated techniques such as prolonged confinement to straitjackets, switching off the heating in wards, and allowing patients to stay in waterlogged cells were all in full force at the asylum. Moreover, Jeremiah Arkham never insisted on uniforms for supervillains admitted to his care, preferring them to stay in their costumes as to better shed light on their various disorders. Prolonged solitary confinement was the preferred method of discipline employed by Jeremiah for problematic inmates. Scarecrow, for example, was sentenced to 3 months in solitary at the conclusion of Arkham Asylum Living Hell. Some of the most notable categories of staff at Arkham have included directors, wardens, psychiatrists, and corrections officers. Some of the most notable directors have included Amadeus Arkham, Jeremiah Arkham, Alice Sinner, and Achilles Milo. The most significant warden at the asylum has been Quincy Sharp, who dedicated his life to curing Gotham City. Some of the most notable psychiatrists have included Hugo Strange, Harleen Quinzel, Dr. Ann Carver, Dr. Ruth Adams, and Dr. Jonathan Crane. Some of the most significant corrections officers have included Lyle Bolton and Aaron Cash, who had his hand bitten off by Killer Croc. This brings us to an end of my in-depth guide to Arkham Asylum. Please remember to like and subscribe if you'd like to subscribe, and I hope to be back with more Batman-related content in the near future. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.